Hi, this is Dolores, and I'd like to show you a junk journal that I made for my dear friend Wenche Birkland. It's been so long in the making and in the recording that I feel very awful, but we're in the middle of a renovation and post-moving, and I don't know which end is up. Which end is up? The name of this journal is Images of Pre-Raphaelite Women, and it contains mostly the work of Dante Gabriel Rossetti, who was a preeminent Pre-Raphaelite painter. I can't explain the philosophy and details of this art movement or the paintings this journal contains in its entirety, because this is my 5th attempt at making this video, and it's just not working. It's too complicated and lengthy. However, if you have any questions about anything, please leave them in the comments, and I'll try to, get an explanation to you. The Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood was a 19th century brotherhood, let's say, of artists, and they were called the PRB, Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. They formally they disbanded some years later, a few years later, maybe 5. It was the middle of the 19th century. I think it was founded in 1848. But the style and the philosophy continued up through and including into the 20th century. It was called the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood because as Wordsworth and Coleridge, the two founding, I guess you could say, romantic poets earlier in time, at the turn of the 19th century, they explained in their preface to the lyrical ballads, art should be for everyone, not just the privileged few. Both groups were denouncing the overblown, heavy, ornamental style of the 18th century in all arts, all kinds of arts, and it extended later on into music and so on. If you think of the style of the Ancien Regime, or particularly of Marie Antoinette, how ornamented and how heavy and body concealing and overblown the style was, you'll understand what they were reacting against. The Pre-Raphaelites, also the Romantics, were embracing nature, and that was very important for them. So the artists wanted to return to a style more like medieval style before the artist Raphael, which was a more natural, somewhat unrealistic, a bit distorted, seemingly to us, and colorful style. And what I'm looking at in particular is the representations of women, which I'll explain to you as we go along. The topics they addressed were ancient myth, medieval and Renaissance literature, folk tales, and the work of earlier 19th century poets who addressed all of these other topics. So let's take a look at the journal, and I will explain some things as we go along. Here's a beautiful closure. It's some ribbon that Wenche sent me, and as soon as I thought of this journal, I thought of this as a closure, so thank you, Wenche. The first, the cover painting is a picture painted by the Pre-Raphaelites. It's by John Collier, one of those artists, and it's of Lady Godiva. And as you know, I'm sure you know, Lady Godiva rode through town naked on the back of a horse, and she did this because her husband was taxing the people, and she wanted to prevent him from doing so. So he said, if you ride naked on the back of a horse, I will lower the taxes. It was that easy. So she did it. And here's some baby headband lace, and the The cover is a brown paper, and I crinkled it and inked it and sprayed it, and it's kind of very simple. Okay, on the inside is a pocket and some more of this lace and a couple of tags. Now, I've written explanations of some of the paintings on some little cards that I've embossed and done calligraphy on, and they're interspersed throughout the book. I'd like to say that the materials I used were coffee dyed paper and some of the wallpaper designs of William Morris, who was the beginner of the arts and crafts movement. And this was a direct result of the Pre-Raphaelite movement. It was a desire to get back to naturally made, handmade things in reaction to the Industrial Revolution, which was in full swing, I guess, in the 19th century. Here's a tag made from one of the paintings of Rossetti, and it's Beatrice, the beloved of Dante. And I've used this image in several places. It's quite beautiful. Here's a punched page. Now this is this is a photograph of Jane Morris, the wife of William Morris, who was a model of probably the most outstanding model of Dante Rossetti, and also his lover. And there was a photo shoot on this day, and I have several photos inside the journal, and one on the next page in particular. Here's probably my favorite Pre-Raphaelite painting. Jane Morris was the model, and it's a painting of Persephone, who was the daughter of Demeter, the mother goddess, the earth goddess, and who was taken to hell by Hades, kidnapped her, and made her his queen. And she could no longer return to earth because she ate something, and that was the pit of a pomegranate. So in this painting, she's pondering this little pit that prevented her from returning to her life and having to remain in hell for the rest of her existence as the queen of hell. And I think it's the most poignant painting that Rossetti did. And you can see Jane Morris is quite striking looking. Now, one of my theories, and something I've written about, is the Pre-Raphaelite moment, where these painters take the literature or the myth or whatever and pick out a particular moment that characterizes the entire story. And in this one, as you can see quite clearly, she's at the moment of eating, or just having eaten the pomegranate pit, a very poignant moment that changes her whole life. And so that was what Rossetti was looking for. There's a whole myth that he could have chosen from, but he chose that single moment, that where she reflected on it and reflected on the enormity of what she had done. And many of the Pre-Raphaelite paintings are like that. And here's what I'd like to, I think this page demonstrates what the Pre-Raphaelites and their relationships with their women, or what they did with the images of the women that they painted, what they were up to. Here's the photograph from that same photo shoot, and here's the painting that Rossetti did as a result. So if you look at the photograph, you'll see that this is quite ordinary. Her hair is kind of ratty looking and looks like it hasn't been combed, and it's not shiny. It's, it's all kind of not appetizing. And here it's lustrous and waved, and something like to run your hand through, maybe. He emphasizes her beautiful blue eyes. And then look at the fabric, and you'll see how the fabric is kind of homespun and wrinkled and not very attractive, while here it's almost silk looking, or maybe very fine cotton gauze, or whatever they made their fine cotton fabrics from. And her sexuality is emphasized here. You can see her breast and the outline of her legs, whereas you can't see that so clearly here. And then if you look at her hands, and here they're curled up and against her, and over here they're outspread and are a very important aspect of the painting. And Rossetti focused also on the lips of his models. Now at the time, I suppose the lips were the one place where he could emphasize sexuality in a safe way. So the lips of all his women are quite voluptuous. And then here's her little card that goes with her. This is a painting by Waterhouse, and it's called Mariana in the South. Now, Mariana was a character from Measure for Measure, a dark Shakespearean comedy, was so-called dark comedy. And in the last lines of the play, this character, who was not very prominent, but who was trying to make a lot of trouble and capture the love of Angelo, I think he was the prince, was done away with, and she's banished in the last lines. And someone says, well, where is she? And it was said, yeah, she's in the Moated Grange. Mariana is in the Moated Grange. So Tennyson, who wrote in the 1830s, wrote two poems about Mariana. One was Mariana and the Moated Grange, and it just talked about her loneliness and unhappiness. And another one, Mariana in the South, which did kind of the same thing. Now, this is Mariana in the South, and again, Waterhouse took that moment of Mariana, you know, pondering on her situation, her loneliness, unhappiness, and so on. And here's the painting that resulted, is actual Mariana looking in the mirror and thinking, you know, what happened to me? Why did this happen to me? I'm so lonely. So that's what, you know, what that one is about. Here's a painting of Rossetti, and it's a tag here, and it's called Mona Vana, and I have this elsewhere as well. Now, one of the other items that I used in this book were the digital kit of, I think she says her name Lala or Layla Chandra. She's on Etsy. I'll put a link below. And she has Pre-Raphaelite paintings and a series of papers, a digital kit that contains, you know, beautiful, compatible to the Pre-Raphaelite items, papers. And this is also one of hers, which I mounted and put some glossy accents on. Here's some corrugated paper that I painted gold. Here I was just playing with some texture paste and rhinestones. That's what that is. Now this is a William Morris wallpaper that's so beautiful, and some of which I included here in this book, some lace. And here's the heart on the sewing. These are from Lala, and these as well. And here's a painting by, I think it's Waterhouse, yes, called The Crystal Ball. And it shows a woman in medieval dress pondering a divining instrument, a crystal ball, and the topic there is death, and perhaps she's casting a spell or thinking about her own death. It is a moment there. I'm not sure that there's any literature attached to this, I'm not sure. This again is the William Morris paper. Is that gorgeous? Now this is Lizzie Siddall, who was the wife of Rossetti, and she has an interesting story. She posed for a famous painting of Ophelia that I think, I don't remember who painted it. I think it was Waterhouse, but she posed in a bathtub full of water and is said to have gotten ill and had a long illness and as a result died. But she was a favorite model of Rossetti for many years. And here she is as Beatrice, the beloved of Dante. Now, Dante Rossetti strongly identified with the poet Dante from the 14th century, whose beloved was Beatrice, and painted him many times and painted her many times. Here's a sketch by Rossetti of his wife making a painting, and she was a painter and supported a great deal by the artists surrounding her. Here she is, I think, toward the end of her life. She was sick, and he painted her many times. Dante Rossetti. Now, this is Jane Morris in 1904, painted by Evelyn de Morgan, who was a woman painter. And the topic of this painting, I mean, she remained beautiful throughout her life, and here she is in 1904. Called The Hourglass, and it's the older queen contemplating her end, which we're prone to do when we get to a certain age. And this is the study for that painting, also by De Morgan. And this came in the mail the day I was working on this page, so I thought it would be nice to put it in there. Here's a beautiful painting by Leighton, Frederick Leighton, also a Pre-Raphaelite painter, and it's called, can you see that? Yes. It's called Flaming June. And for the time, I mean, we don't think of this kind of thing as Victorian, but it is really quite Victorian. As the Pre-Raphaelites were, Victorians reacting against the surrounding culture, I suppose, and leading to what was the aesthetic and then decadent movements at the end of the century. The woman is totally relaxed and asleep, and as the viewer, put yourself in the viewer's place, and you're a man, you come upon this woman who's totally vulnerable, and you have a world of possibility ahead of you if you're so inclined. And the theme involves death. As this is an oleander, it's a totally poisonous, very poisonous plant, flower. And I don't know, I love this painting. It's just so draped and beautiful. And here is, let's see, my frame. This is by Waterhouse, called, it's about roses. I'm sorry, I can't quite remember. And this is about Flaming June. And some pictures from Lala's set, which are repeated later on in the journal. Here's some, I made some of these lockets, and they're mostly Waterhouse women, and I think this one is this image from the roses. Here's some other, this one again is Beatrice. Here's Jane Morris and a sketch by Rossetti. And this woman is Fanny Cornforth, another one of their models, and it's called Fazio's Mistress by Rossetti. And this painting refers to a poem by Fazio degli Berti and his portrait of his lady Angiola of Verona. And it begins, and it was from the 14th century, I believe, or earlier, and it was translated by Rossetti. I look at the crisp, golden, threaded hair, whereof, to thrall my heart, love twists a net, using at times a string of pearls for bait, and sometimes with a single rose therein. And it was medieval, and Rossetti translated. And it's quite sensuous, and as is the poem. This is also a painting of Rossetti called Mnemosyne, the goddess of memory. She's holding a lamp. Some punched border here. And this is Lady Lilith, also by Rossetti. The model is, I believe, Alexa Wilding. Now, Lilith is from Jewish folklore, and she's supposed to have been the first wife of Adam, who didn't want to have any children. So she was banished, and then Eve took her place. And of course, Eve was the mother of humankind. Here's some glass glitter on here. And this is again that Mona Vanna, My Lady Vain. And she has these beads which appear in a couple of Rossetti's paintings, which I put some Martha Stewart glitter on, the glitter, liquid glitter, and it comes out in little balls if you so wish it to, so it kind of makes the necklace. And here's the little pocket with some rose fabric, mesh fabric. Here's a little, this is tissue paper with some, with a head from, I forget the name of the painting, Perfect Day, I think. I can't remember. Anyway, here's Persephone again. I love that painting. Here's some journaling pages. I don't think Wenche will journal a lot in this book. It's mostly kind of an art book. And here's a very interesting story. This is by Edward Burne-Jones. Now, this is called Fair Rosamond and Eleanor. Eleanor here was the wife of Henry II, Eleanor of Aquitaine, and at one point she enticed into her chambers and then poisoned Henry's young lover, Eleanor, Fair Rosamond. So that's what this is about. Now, let's see. Wenche, incidentally, who made me a journal that I've had, and it's totally gorgeous. I'll put a link below. I'd love for you to see it. Used a piece of a curtain, which I did as well, and there are the tabs that I cut off these curtains, these Indian curtains, and I use them in here. This is Lady Lilith again with a little locket and some lace. Same page. This is a Tudor, called The Tudor Girl, and it comes from a book, illustrated book of stories, and by Brickman, Eleanor Brickman. And illustrators were and still are considered kind of second string artists, but these were exceptional, I think. I think she was an exceptional illustrator, and I have some of her work here. A woman Pre-Raphaelite artist. Here's that texture paste. This is Sea Spell, and I'm not sure what the topic is of this painting, but I think it's quite beautiful. And here it is, the tag. And here's that rose fabric again. Now this is called Georgiana by Edward Burne-Jones. This is his wife, and he did many paintings of her. And again, you can see the idealization of women by Pre-Raphaelite artists. This is her in real life, this is her photo, and here's how he perceived her. So they're quite different, as you can see. I mean, the hairline alone, poor thing is losing her hair, but he gives her, you know, he fills it in here, and that's great. This is, oh, look, no, that's not Legilin, but, I'm sorry, but I don't know the name of this painting. In a Bower, I think, or A Perfect Day, perhaps. And this is a tag. Here's Ophelia, and this one I believe is by Waterhouse. Not Ophelia, I'm so sorry. Lady of Shalott. The Lady of Shalott was a poem by Tennyson, and it involves the role of the artist in society. Tennyson wasn't sure if the artist should be alone and creating that way or intermixing with the world. And he came to the conclusion in this poem that if the artist who's the lady, metaphoric lady, relates with society, it will be her end. She won't be able to create any longer. So there she is in her tower, and then she left and went into her boat, and there she just died. And Lancelot, who was portrayed in the poem, said, "Oh, she had a pretty face." And that's kind of the artist in society. Oh, she had a pretty face. Nothing really important about her. So these were representations of Tennyson's despair or depression or problem with being an artist in society. This is an envelope on the other, clipped, and it opens on the other side. And these are some wooden birds that I painted. And here's a sea spell. And in this envelope, I have a number of photographs of the Pre-Raphaelites. Okay. Here's a William Morris wallpaper. Jane Morris. This is very interesting item. I've had this since the 90s. I used to be, well, I wrote my dissertation on the poetry of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and I was a member of the Browning Society, and these were like little note cards and so on, and bookmarks that they sold, and which I bought, and I think that's my last one of Browning there. So that's a little gift. Okay, so this is packing paper, which is all over my life, still is, as I unpack, and I used it in a book. And here is a little flip over, and it contains the work of Lala, her beautiful little tags, and here's a little book that I made with the Hamza on it for good luck. This is not a book, this is a folder. Oh no, it's a book. Okay, I have another one that's a folder. And inside here is a picture of Alexa Wilding, the model, who was very successful for Rossetti. And this is his other model, Fanny Cornforth, who we saw as the Fazio's lover. And when she became too overweight to model, they gave her the job of housekeeper. So we have a drawing of her later on. Here's Veronica Veronesi, who was a Renaissance figure, I think Venetian, that was painted by Rossetti, and Alexa was the model. Now this painting is interesting because she represents here the creativity, and she's at the moment of creating music, and she's kind of thinking about the whole, process of creativity. And what's interesting to me about it is that creativity, women were not creators, they were muses, and they could only inspire art. But here she's actually creating art herself. She's writing music down here. So I thought that was really interesting. Inside this envelope, which is a paper bag, are some explanations of this painting. Here's Mona Vanna again. This is La Ghirlandata, the Garlanded Lady by Rossetti, and these are just gorgeous roses that he painted. This is a pocket. It's a CD pocket that I put some fabric on and painted and so on. Some tags. And here's Fazio's lover. Here are the tabs for my curtains. And here's Mariana in the Moated Grange by Millay. And again, the moment she looks out, she's bored, she's tired. And here's a little card with that. This is Lala's Beatrice. Another piece of Lala's work, Mimosini. This is Sappho, painted by Charles Mengen. Mengen or Mengan, he's French or English. But Sappho was an ancient Greek poetess, we say now. And she was from the Isle of Lesbos and thus lesbian. She wrote poetry to women, seemingly, and we don't have her entire output, but there are some who say she was a great poet. I, in particular, have not studied her, but a colleague of mine has, and says that she, yes, indeed, she's a great poet. But there's her Victorian painting, or a painting made in the Victorian era, can you believe it? And the dark, somber aspect of it really makes it serious and almost menacing. Here's her lute, upon which she composes hanging down at her side. Here's another moment. We all know about sirens who, in the Odyssey, lured men to their deaths with their singing. In other words, they sang in a way that men couldn't resist, and then as soon as they got the men to come to them, they were killed. So here's a moment. Here's the seaman, or whatever he is, swimming to the beautiful sound of the siren, the irresistible sound, and we know he's going to be dead within a few minutes, because that's what they do. Here's a very interesting painting, Blessed Damozel, by Rossetti. Now, the story here is similar to a poem by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, upon which a number of their work was based. The Garlanded Lady and so on, the one Lady in the Bower. And in this poem, well, let's look at the painting. The woman is dead and in heaven, and she's looking over the gates of heaven and watching her lover marry someone else. And in the poem that Rossetti wrote to accompany it, she would give anything to be there. And in the poem Elizabeth Barrett Browning wrote, she deceived the man, made a deal with the dark spirit, married him first, and then went to heaven, because she didn't want to be in this position watching him marry someone else. Well, the point is that heaven is supposed to be a perfect and wonderful place, and there was a crisis of faith in the 19th century, and this was part of it. You know, in other words, challenging the idea that heaven is perfect and that we'll be perfectly happy when we get there. Some tags under here. This is a bag, a flap of a bag. It's one of Lala's papers. Here are two, well, a tag with Tim Holt's tissue paper, and also another, either a tag, a journaling tag, or a bookmark, depending on what it's used for. There's a packing paper. And these are Lala's beautiful, she's got heart pockets that are unique and just, I love them. And here's some of her tags and little journaling cards. And here's one of her cameo shaped Rossetti pictures that I mounted on this, I don't know what it is, kind of a vinyl paper, and then painted it with some gold around. Here's a painting of Rossetti himself, done by Holman Hunt, the other, another founder of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. Here's Willie Morris wallpaper. Here's Fanny Cornforth, and the painting by Rossetti is Bocca Baciata, the kissed lips, and you can say that so elegantly in Italian. And here's a little decorated clip. Now here's two sketches of Fanny made by Rossetti when she became their housekeeper, and she's sewing. He did a number of sketches of her sewing, and they're gorgeous, I think. And this is my favorite page, because here I printed out another arm and laid it over the top and put some English tulle in here so that it looks as though she's actually holding the fabric while she's sewing it. And I thought that was just beautiful. And this is very interesting because this is Marie Spartiali Stillman, and she's an Italian-born Pre-Raphaelite painter. She was part of their group, the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood group. I think her husband was also a painter. Now, she served as a model as well for the Pre-Raphaelites. In this case, we have a situation reversed, so of course it's a feminine outlook on this Pre-Raphaelite business. She herself looks like a Pre-Raphaelite painting with the loose hair, long and sensuous, and the jewelry, you know, and the flowing dress, and looking directly into the camera. This is a photograph. She looks directly into the camera, which women really didn't do in those days. And here's her painting of Madonna Pietri degli Scrovni. These are northern Italian words which I find difficult to pronounce, so sorry. And this painting looks more like it's a Renaissance woman, but she looks more like a perfect Victorian lady. So kind of works in the opposite way here, I guess. And again, here's her painting of Beatrice, and again, she too looks more Victorian than Pre-Raphaelite. So it is the painter herself who is the Pre-Raphaelite, and I just dig that very much. Here's a tag with some of Lala's little remnants here that I put into a pocket. And in this envelope, made out of a tea bag, is a miniature of this painting set on a piece of metallic, no, it's not metallic, I'm sorry, the tag is metallic, the top is metallic. This is just painted black cardstock. It goes in here, and this goes in here. Like that. Okay. This is again Jane Morris. She had a very haunting face. I mean, unforgettable face. Here's some glass glitter on a doily, which I thought was lavender or dark blue, but turned out to be black. Oy vey. Jane Morris again, some trim, and some William Morris, who was her husband, I think I said, William Morris wallpaper. This is Alexa Wilding, the very successful model of Rossetti, and they were not sexually related, or had no romantic involvement, and for that reason I believe the paintings of her were very successful in a certain way. They weren't wild as some of the other ones were, and sensuous as some of the other ones were, but they were really good paintings and ones that he's remembered by. Some center of the signature. Now this is by Lawrence Alma-Tadema, who often set his paintings into Roman times, and the name of this one is Don't Ask Again. Please don't ask again. The answer is no. And here's some of this is just a piece of paper that I love that I put in here. Here's a quote. These are Lala's. Color d'amore o di pietà sembiante. What I understand it to mean is the color of love. That's what that means. Or in Sicilian, more like the anger of love. I hate the semblance of piety. So my Italian is pretty poor. I'm sure it means something quite snappy that I'm not perceiving. These Lala's, beautiful objects that I love. I'm leaving a link to her work. Here is this is a William Morris wallpaper. Isn't it divine? And this is a journaling card, and it's the Holy Grail. And you all know this. Here's a little butterfly in here. The Holy Grail is associated with Mary Magdalene. I believe that's who this is. She was the 13th disciple, you know, and all that myth. Here's the other side of that napkin. This is also Alma Tadema, and these are the Roman women, and it's called Their Favorite Poet. So here she has a book scroll, and she's reading the poems of her favorite poet, which I think is cute. I mean, you just don't pick up a book, you pick up the whole scroll. Here's an interesting painting. This is by that woman, Eleanor Brickwell. I said Brickman, I meant Brickwell. It's called The Uninvited Guest, and it is a wedding, and the uninvited guest is Amore, you know, the little god of love. And the reason he's uninvited is because what this is meant to convey is that these two people who are getting married are totally uninterested in each other, but she's focused on her beautiful bridal gown and who are her attendants, and they're really not in love for love, or they're not marrying for love, but they're marrying for wealth. Look at these sleeves. To me, like, I can't do this, and I just love when artists do this. They actually represent the texture of satin, and I don't know how they do that. It's just amazing. It's just beautiful. You know, they say, oh, highlight this in this color, blah, blah, but, you know, it doesn't work for me. So, yeah, I love it. And I love this page also. This is the Beatrice. Now, Dante never met her in his life, you know, and had a conversation. He was just in love with her for his entire life at a distance. And the story is in his Vita Nuova. You can read the story of his love for Beatrice, that she was holy, you know, Beata Beatrice, holy Beatrice, and inspired him to be holy himself. And while she met him a couple of times, sometimes she acknowledged him for various reasons, and sometimes she didn't. I think one time she acknowledged him. You know, these are very formal rules of society that they had back in aristocratic Florence. This is where they lived. And this is called the Salutation of Beatrice, where she does acknowledge him. And his wife, Rossetti's wife, Lizzie, was the model here. This is also Lizzie. She's quite beautiful. And the curtain with a little tool. Now, what I did for the background was, this is actually a German Renaissance city, but it looked a little bit like Florence with the Duomo and so on. So I placed her here in Florence. I thought that would be a good thing to do. Here's the locket and a piece of trim. Here is a wonderful painting, very unusual. It's called Venus Verticordia, Venus of all hearts. And while it's Venus with a bare breast, an arrow, and so on, she's got a halo not unlike that of the Virgin Mary. So you can see where they kind of fused lines between religion and secular issues, and I don't know too much about this painting, only to say that it's quite beautiful, and who knows what, you know, I would read more about it. I should read more about it. And all the flowers, these are love, and you know, the red flowers signify love. Nothing. Tag. And here I wrote about it, Venus Verticordia. Online in the Rossetti archive, it says, this figure exhibits great erotic power, great worldliness, and great indifference. And at the same time, it's highly spiritual. So Rossetti was trying to identify some kind of ambivalence or, fuzzy line between the secular and the religious, I think. This is a punch that I put on some paper, put a little glitter here. Here's a little envelope that I made, one of those envelopes that people are making with the book page and so on. And I like this one a lot. I'm very happy. There's Jane, and here she is out here in this painting. I think it's the Bower, or I'm not sure. I'm so sorry I didn't really remind myself of what that was. I have it written down here. No, of course not. Okay, this is Alexa again in Veronica Veronese, and this is a piece of beautiful Tim Holtz paper. This clip, I love that. The problem with these is that they're very wide and they don't really hang on to thin pieces of paper. Here's a painting by Rossetti. It's called The Annunciation, as you can see, and it's in a little pocket on the tag, which I made out of, paper, that backing paper for a product, which I forget what it is now. But there's a problem with this painting as well. Here's the moment where the angel Gabriel came to the Virgin Mary, told her that she would be the mother of God. Now that's an astounding thing to learn about yourself, but look at her. She's not happy. She must have had some misgivings, and that's what Rossetti was capturing here. That's the moment that he captured quite brilliantly and dramatically, I think. Feminists criticize this because in most representations of the Annunciation, the male figure is above the female figure, but I mean, I don't take offense at that. I don't think that's how it was. Here's a picture of Lizzie, Rossetti's wife, when she was sick, I guess. Here's some of Morris's wallpaper. Here's a piece of the wallpaper that I colored with some Inktense pencils and a gray doily with some sparkles on it, and some more journaling pages. This is called Bower Meadow, and this is Marie Stillman, the artist, who's a model, and the other one is Alexa. And this is a beautiful picture. I'm not sure of the history of it or what it means, but it's simply I believe an Italian pastoral scene. Glorified peasants. Okay, this goes here. Clip fell off. This is La Ghirlandata. This is one of Lala's tags. So beautiful. This is a painted envelope. And in here, this is gotta glue that. The Grimm's Tale, there's a Grimm's Tale called The Beggar Maid. Now, the 19th century was a time when they just kind of recovered all these folk tales because they realized that we were going to lose them if we didn't recover them. And they recovered many, many things in the 19th century, from language to literature and so on, because they realized that things were becoming, that things could become extinct, and it's all, they started to worry about it then, recover all these things then. So this is a story about a king who wants to find a perfect wife, and he rejects all these princesses, and he found the perfect queen in a beggar maid. And this, I believe it's from a book, and I believe it's Brickwell, whatever her name is, Eleanor. But I'm not sure. It might be somebody else. And this is a very beautiful painting. This is Rossetti's first woman. It's his wife, Lizzie, and the name of the painting is Queen of Hearts. And she's there in pose of Queen of Hearts. Here she's wearing this necklace, and it's called Regina Cordium, which is Queen of Hearts, and I have a little card about it. And it's here, from here, that he went on to make his other great paintings, sensuous paintings of sensuous women. And I love this trim, gaudy. Here is the Beguiling of Merlin. And this is another great topic of the early Victorian poets, even late Victorian poets, was the Arthur story. And so it was also painted by the Pre-Raphaelites. Also the Romantics worked on it. So Merlin wasn't always a straightforward guy. He fell off the beaten path, and he was beguiled, let's say, by Nimue. I think her name was Nimue, or Nimue, not sure. And she was also a witch, and here she is enticing him away from his job. And these are Lala's little things, which I love. Here's a photograph of some of the Pre-Raphaelites. Here's Rossetti, Holman Hunt, Fanny, who did get really overweight, and this is a decadent, call him a decadent poet, Algernon Swinburne, and he wrote really wild poetry, very interesting. He was part of this group. Some journaling pages, and here's the other side of the gray doily, with a little flower on it, and here's that beautiful William Morris wallpaper, little image in there. And can you believe I used the Martha Stewart hydrangea punch and punched and painted and glued and rhinestoned all those little things, and I love it. So it was worth it. Here's Fanny's hair, which is totally amazing, and these are Lala's tags and things here. That cover. Thank you very much for watching. Any questions, please leave them.